Good morning, Derek Ross here from First Peoples Development. This tutorial is completing the annual operational plan, also known as the AOP, which I will be mentioning throughout this tutorial. We are going to start with the organization info sheet, which is very straightforward, getting your annual allocations. So first off, this is a sample First Nation. The numbers that I'm using are undetermined or just numbers I'm using from a sample First Nation AOP. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, DI project numbers are there, as well as the CRF project numbers and childcare. So those are self-explanatory. First of all, you would put the name of the organization, the fiscal year that you are planning for. For this case, we're using a 15-16 annual operational plan that was due December 19, 2014. So I'm going to start plugging in some numbers here so that we can work on the rest of the workbook. So the numbers that I'm putting into this organization info sheet will transfer automatically over to the Part B Table 1 summary. Let's get started here. So we're using that annual allocation for EI. Now if you were to have a carry forward from the previous year, you want to identify it in this on this page so that it'll show in the table summary as well. If you had a carry forward, you would put it in there, and then the next line would be justification of that carry forward. So what you're going to be doing with it in the next within the first quarter, you need to spend that carry forward within the first 2 quarters actually, along with your first quarter allocation for that year. If there's total funding from other sources, you can put it in this box as well. Next, the CRF allocation. I'm going to plug in a number here, just random. And again, any carry forwards, put into this box, justify what that carry forward is, and a little bit additional information how you're going to spend it in the first and second quarter. Any total funding from other sources, you would put it in this box. Then we have the child care allocation, and we'll put that amount in. And enter. Let's scroll down here. Now, one thing that there's a pilot project happening with Service Canada and a few of our First Nations, and it has to do with First Nations Job Fund. If it's applicable, you would be using this box as well. For this sample, I do not have an allocation for that, but you would put it in. And it's basically working with social services of ANSI, Aboriginal Affairs in Northern Development Canada, where there is a partnership of training. Funds are being dealt with through the First Nations social program to get them to a certain level where from there, employment and training through First Nations Job Fund, they will take over and assist the client in their training to get employable skills and get them to the next stage, which would be employment. Okay, so we are going to go to the table summary. Now, with putting those numbers in, you are going to see that they will be on the table summary at the top. This page, the table summary, is automatic. So any numbers that you're working on with the organization info, table 3B worksheet, basically those numbers are going to be transferred over to this table summary automatically. And once you put in your First Nation name, everything pops up on all these pages. So looking at this page, we have EI, Part 2, we got the CRF program, we got the child care, and we got the First Nations Job Fund if we were to be using that. But for this sample, we are not. So automatically all these numbers will be added. So there's your total contribution for this sample First Nation. And once we start putting numbers into the funded programs, they will be coming back to this table summary. Now, I want to explain the administration costs and core program services first. Service Canada, through their agreement with us, there's a 15% admin cost to the First Nations. 5% of that is the admin cost that we take for administering the program for 34 sub-agreements. So 5% of each sub-agreement would be taken off the top of the allocation. And this is the remainder of theirs, less that 5%. So in turn, they have 10% that they can use for administration costs of their program, which is salaries, mercs, and overhead. And then you'll also have funded program activities as well, which will be training and funding clients for training, job startups, targeted wage subsidies. And we'll explain that a little bit more on the next form as we go along. So that's just, and then there's partnership development, and that would be the coordinator dealing with the partnerships. Anytime they spend meeting with partners, whether it be institutions or employers, they would have to identify that part of their salary towards partnerships. Then there's child care programs, which we will look at as well on the funded programs, table 3B. So let's get started here. We are going to the funded programs. So what I've done with this, I've taken the numbers out and I'm going to be easily putting them into the table just to help you to understand how we're getting these numbers and totaling to balance to our allocation. So you got an employment training coordinator. I'm going to plug in some numbers randomly from my cheat sheets and explain at the same time. So you look at administration and core services. I'm going to explain again. Administration is the time that you are working on reports, working without the clients, basically paperwork. That's the time that you're going to identify how much time you're working doing that and how much time you would be also working with clients. And clients is with the core services, which is B. And then further, you have to identify what's EI and what's CRF. Let me explain. EI is Part 2 funds that has to be used for clients that are reach-back clients that have had EI in the last 3 years or have been on maternity in the last 5. Those are the reach-back clients that you can fund, and if you do, that's where you would report in these tables. CRF is a consolidated revenue fund, and that is for all non-EI reach-back clients. So for the most part, it's clients who've just coming out of high school or on welfare, never worked, have been in the job force. So that's where, and that fund is going to be a little higher than the EI fund. And so let's get started on plugging some numbers in here. We've randomly chosen this salary for a coordinator of $40,200. So based on that, we've worked on ratio of 25% admin and 75% core services. So 75% of the time this coordinator is going to be working with clients and 25% of the time working on reports. So we're going to plug some numbers in here. And there we go. So let's take a look here. That's going to be, and it totals itself at the end here at the far right. Okay, so that's the salary of the coordinator. Next line item, administrative assistant. Okay, so if it's a bigger agreement, more clients to deal with, it depends on how many clients are the population of your First Nation. You would probably need an administrative assistant. So we are going to plug this one in at say 28,000, and we're going to, where the coordinator has worked, does a lot of the paperwork. The administrative assistant will be working with the clients directly. So we are going to put all of her salary or his salary in core services. And I'm putting in some of it into EI because they do pay into EI. And so that's going to be 28,000. Okay, so it adds itself. So it's just figuring out your with your allocation, working on your administration first and core, and then after that, whatever's left, that's what you're going to fund for your clients for training. So then with this particular sample, you have a finance director that's doing a lot of the work for the administration. So there's a salary for that position, and we've got a number of 24,000, which kind of works out to like an admin cost internally, the time that they are working on check recs and preparing for audits throughout the year. So let me plug some numbers in here. And so that's 24,000. Okay. Next line item, we have the MERCs, mandatory employment related costs, and that's usually about 10% of the total salaries that you would want to identify for EI, CPP, if they got health insurance. So it's all put into that one line item. So we are going to put in some numbers for that. And so we got a total there of 12,750 that was identified for MERCs. Then there's travel. Now we're getting into the overhead of the office. So with travel, the coordinator goes to 2 sub-agreement holder meetings that are held by FPDI, our organization. They also have other travel that they would use for, say, monitoring of students, be it in the city, in the urban areas. Sometimes clients will be in other provinces as well and taking training. So, there's travel that is associated with dealing with their clients. So I'm going to put in some amounts here for that. Of 20,000. There again, totals it up by itself. Next line item, insurance. So this is insurance for, say, their building, all their equipment, and it could be a blanket insurance through the First Nation, and it could be prorated. So I believe this is a prorated amount that they would pay for their building. So we are going to put that in core services. as the clients use that building as well. With this, excuse me, this particular sample, there's a building, the employment training office, with a youth center as well. So they need to insure that building. Excuse me. Office supplies, furniture, and equipment for the building. So, that's you need. You need desks. This particular sample, there's computers and computer desks in there. A few offices, the coordinator's office, assistant's office, and they also have the youth center. So they need a budget for their supplies, furniture, and equipment. So let's plug in some numbers there. And these are numbers you would predetermine with your planning. So you would want to sit down with your finance person uh, based on your allocation and figure out that part of the administration. So then rent, we have for that they pay also to the First Nation. We've got an amount there. $12,000. They also have to pay their telephone, their internet, hydro, and fax. So put in something there for the year. Okay, then audit, and every sub-agreement holder has to do an audit, and it could be, there's usually a consolidated audit with the band, and the auditor does the audits on all programs, or where we are separate as Service Canada funders. We would like that they use their own audits, their own auditor. So for this, we will put in an amount of $8,000. Client assessments. So client assessments, we don't have anything in for that because that's part of the employment training coordinator's job. So there's no amounts in there. We could easily take that out. Legal services. The only time you would use legal services if you would be dealing with a employee that is leaving for whatever reason. You would want to make sure that you talk to legal services with regards to that. So they haven't identified anything there, which is a good thing. IT support. I think they've included this into another line item because there's no amount there as well. So yeah, we could look, it's probably in the internet line item as well. Training and development. Okay, so what we have there is 6,000. Oh, sorry. Let's correct that. Training and development. Oops. Okay, so I gotta put that back in there. And development. I started with the Excel expenditures, and only because working with the numbers, there's there's the another spreadsheet of the annual operational plan, which is the activities that mirrors these expenditure plans. So we'll explain a little bit more of these line items in that plan. So we got 6,000 there for training and development. Youth support program, work experience program. That's usually a summer program for graduated students or returning students, and they're looking for work in the summer. So they've identified that, and this is where we're into the funded programs part. That is the first part was with regards to administration and core services. So this from youth on, this is where we go into the funded programs. So under the funded programs, we will be putting for that youth support half and half of EI and CRF. And in the next line item, community computer training center, IS3 certification, resume writing, job search. That's the type of training that they are using for that fiscal year, and they have identified 20,000 for that program. Next is the enhancement year program, and that is where graduated grade 12 students can, if they're not sure after graduation what they want to do, they're going to be able to go into this program and get some type of training to get ready, equipped for college or university. So it's a really good tool for this community. And so we are going to put some amounts in there. Back to the funded programs. And I got a bit of funds in there. That's 57,000 for that program. Then Red River Community Training, ECE, Counseling, Youth Worker. Okay, so we've got some amounts in there, and I'll explain more with the other plan, which mirrors this expenditure plan. So we're going to put in amounts there. Okay, and your youth mentorship program, and this I believe is they have 4 clients per year that do some job shadowing with different departments in the community, and they're usually graduated from grade 12 or maybe graduated from college and want to get some mentoring before starting employment. So this is a good training tool as well. So we'll put some amounts in there. And I think like different departments would be working with the band office, administration, finance. They could be working with lands, O&M, education. So it depends on what they want to get into. So I'll put that amount in there. Next line item, mobility, and this is for I think would be part job startups or getting to where they're going for training or starting a job. So we put some amounts in there. You don't want to give them too much just enough to get them to where they got to be, and their first to get enough to get to their first 2 weeks of pay or to get them to the training that they need to be at. Next is partnership training. We'll explain that through the activity plan once we've completed this expenditure plan. And we'll put some amounts in there. Just putting these amounts in and going to show you how it's got a balance on the table summary to the allocation. So the next is community partnership, and we'll take a look at the activity plan for that. I'm not sure what that entails, but it will show in the activity plan. So put two amounts in there. Youth workshops. Okay, so they do a few workshops throughout the year where they bring in the youth and do some training. Excuse me. And they bring in some trainers to do different things. Could be life skills or other training that they identify. So they've got 10,000 identified. Let's bring this down a bit. A couple more line items and we can go back to the table summary. So class 1 truck driving training, they have identified. And there's different types of training that each community identifies, and what they want to do for that following fiscal year. This is the time to put all that stuff in. And this plan is not written in stone once it's signed off. You can amend it halfway through that fiscal year that you're in, because you're planning prior to the fiscal year, and sometimes throughout the fiscal year things change. Training gets canceled. There's different reasons why that can happen. So it's always good to amend the agreement, and we ask that you only do it once throughout the year, usually after 6 months. So you're looking around the fall, end of September, October. This last line item, heavy equipment operator training, and we'll put those amounts in, and hopefully this will balance to the allocations on the table summary. So total administration and funding would be $594,650. Now those numbers will be identified back in the table summary. So let's go back there, and if we take a look at the bottom here, we got 175.45 for EI, and if you look here, 2%, by putting it into the most of the work being worked with clients, there's only 2% of that administration. They're allowed 10% on each EI and CRF, so there's 2% there and 9% in CRF. So they're allowed 10% and 10%. And we haven't gotten to the childcare yet, but I just wanted to show you if it's balanced. 175,545 if you look here, and allocation, and there's all the expenditures for EI. Then we got 419,105 and all the expenditures, and they balance. Okay, so there's then the breakdown that we put in here is there's the administration cost for EI and CRF, and then the core program costs here for EI and CRF. Okay, and then funded programs that we looked at last, and there's 164,295 for EI and 259. Like I said, the CRF is higher than the EI allocation. So let's go back to the funded programs. We've completed that part. We need to do the daycare next. So with this agreement, there's a third party table here as well. And this you would want to use if you were using, say, a training education board, where you're just going to get them to do the training. You'll give them a annual allocation out of this allocation to do the training, and you would expect them to report to you as you do to us. So they do not do any third-party payments, so that's why that is blank. And then the next page is the child care. So with child care, we got a director, and she or he, here again, if they do paperwork, it would be part of her salary, or his salary would be administration, doing the paperwork, and then the other part, here it's called program development. It's the same as core services, dealing with the clients, which are the children. Okay, so in this case, this director works, she's identified at 20% of paperwork and 80% with the children. So when there's a 80-20 rule, everything goes to the core services or program development. So we're going to put, let's see, where's that page? We are going to put her total in program development. Okay. Now she's got a Head Start program and daycare in the same building, so there's a split of salary from our program and Head Start, which is Health Canada. So that's what we identify for her salary. And then we have 6 workers, childcare support staff, and we've just put all their salaries in there. There. And then their MERCs, as we talked about with employment training. That's their EI, CPP, health benefits. So we'll put that in there. And then last, the childcare operating costs. They've put it in one line item, so that could be their rent, their hydro, telephone, fax, etc. So we will put that amount in. That's a total 125,762. We go back to the table summary, and there's the total 125,492, and we've got a little bit of a difference here, so we need to correct that. So we'll go back to the funded programs. Let me check my numbers. Oh, there's the difference right there. Transposing numbers, 12,475 and not 745. There we go, 125,492, and we've got a balance here of this amount. Okay. So that's 0% of administration because of the 80-20 rule that the daycare director uses. Okay, so that is the major work of this work plan. The last part, I left the numbers in there, and the numbers that show up in this column, they come automatically from the table summary, and these all numbers will be blank. I've just divided this amount into 12, and I've cash flowed it throughout the year. Okay, and that's done through all these line items. If we look at back here, this is the allocation. There's the administration cost that we looked at in the table summary, the core services amount, and then the funded programs. Okay, and then that's the total. So this is, for this sample, First Nation, a monthly funding release of $14,629. Then we go to the CRF cash flow, same thing. We have the total of $419,105, total funds available, administration costs of $39,710, core services of $120,130, and then the funded programs of $259,265, and that totals that. Divide it by 12, and we cash flow it over 12 months. Okay, so the total monthly release of funding is $34,925 for that allocation of CRF. And then lastly, for this sample, childcare. And much the same thing, other than there's the funds available and it's all program development, so one line item, and that is a monthly cash flow of $10,458. And that we have completed our AOP expenditure plan. So we will go to the next tutorial. Thank you.